Thanks for joining us today on the Culture Drop podcast. Today is part 3 on our series on the Minnesota music scene, where we discuss, among others, Eddie Cochran, Babes in Toyland, and the Trashmen.
How far are you on the Jesperson book? I got something I want to tell you about.
I'm over halfway through.
Okay, you have a copy? Do you have it at hand? Okay, so go to the photo section.
Yeah.
There's not many,
Yeah.
but go to the picture section.
Yeah.
And I don't know what page, because I don't have a copy. There's a picture of Peter behind the desk at Orfolk with some other employees, and Johansson, David Joe, holding a baby.
Okay.
This is kind of a mythical thing, by the way, that you're about to experience. Not mythical for you, but mythical for, well, me and my family. I always thought it may have been apocryphal, but apparently it is not.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, so you see the picture?
Yeah.
And you see David Joe?
Yeah.
Holding the little kid?
Yeah.
That's my nephew, John.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, that's my oldest sister Mary's firstborn, John Gabriel.
Oh, wow.
So she told me about this years ago, not at the time. The picture's from 78. I think it maybe even it says so in 78. So David Joe was on his first solo tour, promoting his first solo album.
Yeah.
And he played the Longhorn.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was the Longhorn. Mary lives around the corner, maybe in the same building as Peter.
Okay.
On Garfield.
Yeah.
But I think that was later. That was maybe months or maybe even a year later.
Okay.
Because when I go over there to babysit her second-born, who's actually my godchild, but that was later. That was at least a year later. So I'm talking like 79 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So she would have been living at the time at Franklin and right off Hennepin into the west, which would be, kind of by, not Hums, but Lowry here, liquor store.
Yeah.
And she was living with my brother Nick and my brother Sean. But she had told me about this, that she was in Orfolk.
Yeah.
And I never knew her to be a Dolls fan.
Yeah.
Or, but she obviously, she knew David Joe, like, as John Gabriel, David Joe is holding. And, Mary, my sister, told me, she was just in there that day, and, I guess David Joe just, baby, give me a baby,
Yeah.
I don't know how it happened. But that's him, and I even recognize the little
Overalls?
overalls. But so Peter doesn't miss a beat. It's just amazing that he put that in there. I don't know if it's special. I'm sure it was a special gig and occasion. David Johansson's first solo tour, and that's for rock and roll people, music people. That's a big deal. But to come to your store, I don't know if he says in the book that they did an in-store. I don't know if they were doing that kind of thing that early. That'd be 1978.
Yeah.
I've got a couple shows. They released a couple years later a live album, full show from the Bottom Line, New York. He played 4 or 5 night stand. A couple weeks after that photo was taken. It's brilliant. Phil Sylvain was in the band as resident court jester. not to carry on too long, but that's another little slice of well, what are we talking about? We're talking about the Minneapolis music scene, and
yeah, no, that fits right in. That's a great story. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. I was amazed when I saw the picture.
I bet you must have had your socks blown off. You're like, what the hell?
Yeah. So there's that. And that album was a big deal when it came out. It was a big deal. I remember that time period, and that was just such a great summer of '78.
Yeah.
That album, and then the Stones, the big comeback with Some Girls, and Springsteen's Out of Nowhere, Darkness on the Edge of Town, and Lou Reed's Street Hassle, and Elvis Costello's This Is Model, and Patti Smith's Easter, and just all these great albums just flying at you.
Yeah.
Anyway, where are we at? We're at the local music scene. It seems you're going to have the floor for this, man. So, because if we're talking about the current scene, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I did some research on the current scene. I want to provide a little context. I saw a lot of stuff when I was in high school, and then I moved away for like 10 years. And, I'd come back and visit, and I'd see bands when I'd come back and visit, but I wasn't as immersed in the scene for, like in my 20s, like you were.
Yeah, well, yeah, dude. I mean, if I might say, these time periods when you're, give us some years, approximate years and stuff, or like when you moved away.
Yeah.
Going to overseas for university in London, or teaching in Hong Kong, or
Yeah, so I graduated high school in 1985. Okay, so I saw a lot of music when I was like 16, 17, 18, which I'll tell you about. Actually, a lot of my knowledge from that period comes from high school dances, where I come to look back at it. Whoever booked our high school dances, we had the Suburbs, the Wallets, and the Mofos, all of those bands several times for school events, so I got to see that.
I've heard stories of that with a lot of big local bands playing high school. Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, I've heard about that kind of thing, and it always blew my mind. Like, these are like world class bands.
Right. So it was incredible. Just that experience alone was a great experience, and I'd come back during the summers or spring break or winter break, and I'd always see bands. So I was seeing local music, still in my 20s, but so I was away like 85 to 89 in college, and 87, 88 I was in London seeing a lot of bands.
In London, yeah.
And then I moved to San Francisco, 89 to 93, and saw a lot of bands. But again, I come back here and visit, but I was, seeing bands there. And then 93, 94, I was in Taiwan, didn't see a lot of live music then. And then I moved back here in 94.
That time frame, there was a lot going on. New sounds, new approaches, new attitudes.
Exactly.
Within the record company business, a lot for better, some for worse. No, I'm a homeboy. I've only ever lived here, and you've lived abroad, and you've been, and we're doing stuff abroad, and so your contact with popular music or less popular music, that's interesting to me. It's very interesting to me. How you were receiving music, how you were hearing it, and of course, getting back to the local thing and how those changes and reverberated with you at that time. So this is really interesting to me.
And then when I came back, like Rev 105 was just starting up, and just Peter Jesperson and Mary Lucia had shows on there, and Ed Ackerson was becoming well known, and so I got into it on a different level, like the 90s music scene. Then when I came back,
Rev 105, that was an interesting station. I can't remember the call numbers on it.
It was like 105.7 or 0.1.
Yeah, but it was nearly a mainstream station. I mean, the short time he was only on the air for 2 years or something like that.
It was kind of like the Germanus for in 2004 around when the Current started. A lot of those DJs winded up there. Right.
But the Rev 105 didn't last that long. I think didn't it only last till the mid 90s or something?
Yeah, I want to say it. It may have lasted a little bit longer than that. Yeah, Rev 105. it was 3 different frequencies, 105.1, point 0.3, and point 0.7. It switched to country music in 92, and then in 93, yeah, here we go. Rev 105 lasted from 1994 to 1997.
Okay, so that's, 3 years. I knew it wasn't long. To me, it had a really great impact.
It did.
It seemed like, and they had excellent reception, too. It was up there with, KQ. It almost felt like a mainstream station, which, by rights, it should have been. It seemed, like, professionally run, and everybody's a pro. Do you remember KFAI, like Fresh Air Radio?
Absolutely, yeah.
And they were, that was FM, Sirius left of the dial.
Yeah.
And I forget what their call numbers were. It was a great station. They just have specialty shows. I had a buddy, you could volunteer to have your own show. And of course, they put him on at 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
And his show was King Sunny Ade and, like, West African music,
Yeah.
He was this eccentric guy. He played, like, an electric oboe, through distorted through an amplifier. But that was, I actually had a submission for KFAI for a show as well, and I never called them or mailed it in.
Yeah, that reminds me. I did a show. They had like a special thing, like every week, like a different guest DJ could do their own show, just like one-off show.
Yeah.
And I remember I did that in high school, and that was a lot of fun.
On KFAI?
Yeah.
Do you have the tape?
I do. I have the cassette of it somewhere.
What was the format for your show? What was sort of, theme or whatever?
I was just playing, cool music like the Color Field, Terry Hall, The Clash, whatever I was listening to at the time. And sounding really pretentious as a high school student.
Oh, of course. How long was it? An hour, 2?
I'm guessing it was like an hour or 2. Yeah.
But you have a tape?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, have you digitized it yet?
No, I'll have to do that.
Okay, all right. You got more.
Got my homework. More homework.
You got all kinds of homework. Yeah, that was a great station. And there was a show they had on, had some wacky, like, sci-fi kind of name. I can't remember. The bumper, the intro music would be, I don't even know the song. It might have been like, I don't know, MC5 or something. Just really gnarly, kind of, like, whoever was doing it. It wasn't Jefferson, I don't think. It might have been Kevin Cole. Something in new music, really cool guitar. And that was like the theme intro to the show. And I forget the name of the show, but it was like Sunday nights or something. It was a regular show on KFAI.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. But then, then so many of those, people came onto, Rev 105,
right, yeah.
A decade later.
That's right.
Like, wow.
Mark Wheat.
Mark
Wheat, yeah.
Was he on Rev 105?
I don't know if he was. Yeah, he was like the director.
Was he? I don't remember him at all until he's on the air with the current, his accent. I always figured he's Australian, but apparently British.
Yeah.
Well, that's when I first heard about him, was, hearing him on the air, as a DJ with the current. So I didn't know that. I knew he'd been living in, Minnesota for years, but I was involved with radio that early. He's gone for current.
He is, yeah. Who knows
NPR.
what happened to him?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of great people. Mary Lucia. I don't know what she's doing now. She's a great DJ, and a very popular one as well. She's one of the drive time. Yeah, so for me, the scene, I guess, the last proper band involved with played out, regularly, an original band was mid-90s. I think maybe, 96, 97. Hut Hike was the name of the band. And it was a young dude, Jake Wisty, from UP, Michigan, the Upper Peninsula, and initially with Cousin Lee on bass. And Lee's just a monster bass player. I think he's a lawyer now, working for the state or the county or something, the prosecutor or defense attorney or something, last I heard. But we went through a lot of personnel changes and even played live different personnel changes. So that's sort of my final hurrah of being involved with music locally, other than various combos which never made it out of either the basement or the rehearsal phase. Had my own rehearsal space. The floor is yours.
Okay, so to rewind the clock again, back a little bit to like 1983, MTV had just came out like a few years before that. I'm starting to discover like these cool British bands, and then I'm discovering the Replacements around the time of Hootenanny, and then Let It Be comes out. And just to set a context, they cast an enormous shadow over everything I'm about to say because they were like the big band for me, locally speaking. Yeah, shadow in a positive way. Their albums Hootenanny and Let It Be were just so pivotal for me. But just thinking back to bands I was seeing live, like another one was the Wallets. You remember that song Totally Nude?
Totally Nude. They're totally naked.
Yeah. Well, they would play our high school dances, and that guy, I forget his name, he passed away, but he was very charismatic on stage. Kind of a synth pop, kind of keyboard-based band.
He played accordion as well. God, what is his name? This is a shame that we're forgetting this.
The Wallets were Steve Kramer.
Maybe that's the guy. I remember what he looked like. He was kind of a balding chap, sort of a cherubic face.
Yeah, that was Steve Kramer. I guess Kramer. Steve Kramer, they performed their final show at the Guthrie in 1989, and then Kramer later formed an advertising agency, apparently, known as Hayden Kramer Van House Weber, and they did like big like commercials and stuff. But yeah, he was very good.
I worked with their drummer, Eric Anderson, I believe was his name.
Yeah, Eric Anderson was one of the members. Yep.
Yeah, and I worked for several years for Dayton's special events. Setting up. The Fast Bash, and the Christmas show, and they had tons of shows. And I was with the special events crew, and Eric came in a couple of years later. He's a corporate, guy. A really, really nice guy. A great guy. And also, we were having sometimes, occasionally, as freelancers, having trouble, getting paid. Our invoices getting lost and whatnot.
Yeah.
Eric put that to rights. He was good like that. So I remember Eric.
And they were, just looking at their Wikipedia page, they were a twin-tone band, talking about Steve Jesperson earlier.
Yeah, that's right. They only released, one album, didn't they?
Well, according to this, they actually had 3, but they were in a short span of time. It was like 86 to 89.
Wow, that late. I would have thought that their first material came out earlier.
Yeah, because like I said, I graduated in 85, and I remember them playing my high school dances.
It probably, took a while, Not everybody gets a record contract, even on Twin Tone. Sometimes it takes a while. Yeah.
But another band, so just to go back to like bands that played my high school dances, the Mofos were my favorite. The Suburbs were really good, really polished, highly polished, almost like a local Duran Duran or something.
I don't think I ever saw the Suburbs.
But they were more, they had like a cool like post-punk edge to them as well in some of their songs. They weren't just like bright synth pop. So they had a real range, and they were very musically accomplished, especially Chan Poling, and I think some other guys. Another band I really remember liking at the time that didn't play my high school dance, but I remember seeing them at the Uptown Bar several times, for example, was an all-female band called the Clams. Do you remember them?
Exile on Lake Street, I think, was their one album.
And I can't find anything about them on the internet now, but they were one of my favorite bands. They really, guitar-based kind of punk rock band. Really good.
Their guitar player, not Cindy Lawson, their second guitar player, can't remember her name, really nice gal, actually auditioned me. Well, I was auditioning them, and she was with a guy, a bass player, singer, songwriter from a band called 111, I think, and one of the bands I was in had opened for them a couple times. Mm-hmm. This is in the late 80s, very early 90s, and formed a band with her. Cindy Lawson was the main singer, guitar player, and this gal, I just can't remember her name, long black hair, really sweet girl, really, really pretty, but very, very sweet, and I think she was a dancer too, and I remember this one audition, and it was just the 3 of us. So this bass player, Mort was his name, big tall guy, really opinionated and loud, and she was on a guitar. She played a Les Paul Casa Black.
Okay, now here's an interesting tidbit I just came across on Wikipedia. Steve McClellan was married to Cindy Steve McClellan of First Avenue.
Yeah, I think I remember that. My brother Nick actually went to school with Steve McClellan at Washburn High School, ran on the track team with him.
Okay.
And God, I just can't remember her name. But I remember we were, one of the songs that she proposed, it was the Psychedelics Furs on Forever Now. From the first song from that album.
Yeah.
And I know that song, that album inside out. It was just, three guitar, bass, and drums, and my basement rehearsal studio. They came over because I, gear and amps and everything. I was just feeling them out. We're feeling each other out. I can't remember if I responded to an ad or it's just word of mouth. I can't remember how we got in contact. 'Cause I knew the guy because I, opened some shows in one of my bands. For his then band. He was trying to start a new thing. Anyway, long and short of it, he was telling me, no, you gotta put raise your hand in the air like Max Weinberg from the E Street Band, or really whacking. And Mort, I'm a furniture mover. If I do that, I'm gonna break my snare head. My very first whack. And then he's like, no. And it's like, no, man, it's just not it. We're feeling each other out, And anyway, we left on good terms. So he's kind of like, and we both agreed, it's not gonna work. I just remember the gal, guitar player, I just can't remember her name.
Yeah.
Kind of looking at me like, I think you're the guy. And I never heard anything about the band or, either of them, ever again. But she's a really good guitar player, too. Yeah, the Clams. I think their one album is called Exile on Lake Street.
Okay, that's cool.
That's a good call on the Clams. Yeah, I only saw them once. I'm sure it was at the Uptown, and they're really good. And this is kind of pre-grunge. So
that's right. And you and I may have been at the same show. Who knows?
Yeah, before sort of Babes in Toyland, started up, and then the Dutch Oven, which, I formed with, Katie and Christine, my brother Matt, 1991, like that. But anyway, the Clams, I think, were Roxy Terry. Matt just told me. Roxy Terry was the guitar player for the Clams.
Okay.
And that's who I was thinking about.
Yeah.
I hope she's still stomping on the Terra as we speak, and having a wonderful and highly musical existence, hopefully. Because she's a really good guitar player.
Oh, now here we go. There's a website called cindysongs.com for Cindy Lawson.
Yeah.
Run Baby Run, the Clams. Little Steven played them on his show.
Yeah, Underground Garage, yeah. I believe that. Pretty hip guy. But the album, I believe, called Exile on Lake Street. Is that, say that on the site?
Music.
Releases or recorded work.
But anyway, she has been located. She is known. Music History Spotlight on the Clams. There's a little page on them. So that's cool. There's a picture of them. Yeah, they're looking super cool. Teased out hair. Some of them kind of look like Chrissy Hynde.
Well, it has a picture of the Clams.
Yeah, Roxy Terry kind of looks like Chrissy Hynde in this picture.
Yeah, very much. You got, the bangs.
Yeah, leather jacket.
Long black hair. Yeah.
Very cool.
Sweet girl. Well, that's the only time, other than seeing them live, I think just once.
Yeah.
That I interacted with her at that one audition.
Yeah, I'm going to send you these two websites that I found.
Thanks, yeah. Well, what else you got on, I think last time we were talking about this, you were saying that sort of a list of
so I've already kind of been...
that you wanted to cover or touch on.
Yeah, so I've kind of started going down. And, I'm trying to be a little bit chronological here. So another interesting story is when I was in high school, I was into cool music and stuff. One of the girls in my high school, who was also into some cool music, passed me a cassette of Jayhawk's demos, which was fantastic. And they were doing the country alt thing kind of before that became a thing. And
when I saw them once at the Uptown, only once, and it was before their first album.
Yeah.
And I thought they were really, really great.
They were really good at that time. It was before the edges were kind of polished off them. And even once they got a contract, some of their stuff was really good. But and they had two kind of main guys at that time. It was Gary Louris and but at that time they were both kind of trading off singing, and personality-wise, they both really shone through as the leaders. But that cassette I used to listen to all the time. And I remember seeing them live, like you, before they had a record contract.
I seem to remember them doing Woody Guthrie's "This Land Is Your Land."
Yeah.
Which, yeah, it's a great song, but, it's like Johnny Be Good, or it's like, Louie Louie or something. It's just, you don't really consider singing as a kid in grade school and stuff.
Yeah.
And it seems to me they did it. It was really tough and really powerful. Of course, there's a whole lot of other verses of that song that we didn't learn in grade school.
That's right.
That Woody had.
Yeah.
Springsteen, used a couple of those verses in his versions, but Woody actually had a whole lot of verses. It seems to me that the Jayhawks early on. Well, that's one of the things I remember about. I think I only saw them once. Although Gary and, what's her name, Karen, joined the band later.
Karen Grotberg.
Yeah, they both played at my sister Ann's funeral.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know who got a hold of them, or they knew Ann. I have no idea. They played a couple songs. They played, I think, Dylan Forever Young, Neil Young, Waiting to Fly. I think, did we talk about this in last episode?
No.
I thought we did. Just on piano and acoustic guitar, just those two songs, and it's beautiful, and so I'll be forever grateful.
Yeah.
They're a great band anyway. That's, I think, the only two times I saw the Jayhawks is really, really early. Before they had a record out at the Uptown, and then 2016, I think it was, when my sister Ann died. The Unitarian Church. And I'd just like to give a shout-out to the Unitarians. I think they're groovy. Okay, Gary, we're talking about Jayhawks.
Mark, just to clarify, it was Mark Olson who was the vocals. It was Mark Perlman on bass. And they had that song, I guess their first album came out in 86, about a year or two after I had that demo cassette. And then they had that big hit a couple albums later with Blue, which is just a great song.
Oh, that's a beautiful song. Yeah, it is. Yeah. They eventually, I think, the first album was on Twin Tone. I think like their third album or something. They got signed to Twin Tone.
Their first album was on Bunkhouse Records. Blue Earth was their next one. That was on Twin Tone. You're right. Yep.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then Hollywood Town Hall, which was kind of like another level for them.
Yeah,
that was on American, which was that Peter Jesperson's? No, that was Rick Rubin.
Well, he had Def Jam.
Yeah, well, I guess he also had American.
American Record. I think they were one was in Umbrella. I think Def Company, and then American was he started doing the Johnny Cash album.
Yeah, Rick Rubin left Def Jam in 1988.
Yeah, because Def Jam they were did hip hop, all kinds of things. The very first time I saw the Mofo, they were still the Hipsters.
Okay.
And it's I think I've told you this story, but I'll just reiterate quickly. The very first time I saw music. Live music in a bar was in the main room at First Avenue. It was still Sam's at the time. This would be the late July of July 30th, I think, of 1980.
Yeah.
And I just, my own apartment. I was 16 at the time. There's the Gang War. Johnny Thunders and Wayne Kramer.
Yeah.
And they played 2 nights there. I told you there. I walked in, they didn't. I was dressed as a rude boy, right, hat and black sport jacket. And the Hipsters were the opening band, and when I walked in, they were playing their last song.
Okay.
And nobody carded me or checked my ID or anything. I was 16. I bought the ticket at Orfo. I think it's Jesperson. I said, "I think they're going to card me," and they got to take a chance. I don't know.
Yeah.
A couple weeks later, whenever the show was, there it was, and nobody carded me or anything. And anyway, the Hipsters were playing the fastest version of the Who Can't Explain. It was just, wow. Just like, oh my God, listen to the sound. Wow.
Yeah.
And then that was the last song. Then the DJ comes on, and the first song they play is the Stones' Hot Stuff.
Okay.
From Black and Blue album.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite Stones albums. The very first brand new Stones album I ever bought.
Yeah.
And it's louder than the Hipsters.
Wow.
And that rhythm.
Yeah.
That this guy's just, heavy crushing. And like, oh my God, I got the whirlies. Oh, geez. I was wearing shades, and I took the shades off finally. I thought this is a bad idea, wearing shades. I found a table to sit at, and I don't know how many songs they played. Finally, the band came on, in bits and pieces,
Yeah.
Johnny was, a guy in Paris sent me the bootleg years ago, so I actually, I've been able to cross-reference my memory, with the actual show. It was a board mix.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's the history. That's my
cool.
first experience with Mofos, with Billy and Ernie Batts.
Yeah.
And then years later, Ernie worked at was it Barnes and Noble in Calhoun Square?
Oh, okay. Sure, I remember that.
Was it Barnes and Noble, or what was the other big chain?
Borders?
Yeah, I think it's Borders. That's right, Borders.
Yeah.
And so I was always in there.
Yeah.
I just lived a couple blocks up on 24th and Manhattan, and I see him, and we didn't know each other, but I remember Billy one time, he was running sound. I was playing a show at the entry with, I forget what band I was in at the time, Einstudenza du Neubauten, the German industrial band, playing the main room.
Yeah.
Got done, packed our gear up and whatever, and so I sauntered over to the main room, and I was nonplussed. I didn't like them at all.
Yeah.
I have since come to really, really dig Neubauten, and really dig their aesthetic, and but at the time, I remember seeing Billy, crossing through the entry or whatever, and it's like, I mentioned, man, these guys suck. And he's like, Billy goes, yeah, all these British bands, they're a bunch of pussies. And I'm like, no, Billy, these guys are German.
Yeah.
And Billy goes, what's the difference? They're all the same.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Okay, so you're hanging with Batson Brothers.
Yeah, and so then my next story is, I told you I lived in San Francisco for 4 years.
Yeah.
But, there were still some connections to Minneapolis music, like 89 to 93, I was living in San Francisco, and the Babes in Toyland were coming up around that time. And they'd been around for a while, before that even, but they were becoming really popular. And I'd see them every time they'd come through town in San Francisco, and they were just a force of nature. I remember, I think I talked to Kat like one time, like she came up for a drink at the bar or something. Just this little thing with the teased out hair and the dress, which of course Courtney Love stole her look from Kat.
No, Courtney stole it. They all stole it from Katie.
Oh, from Katie, okay.
Katie O'Brien, yeah.
Okay.
Courtney was briefly, for like literally 2 minutes,
okay,
in Babes in Toyland. She'd come from Seattle or somewhere in Washington, wherever the hell she's from. And this is, right before the whole, grunge thing started. And Katie was sporting that look, from the early 80s.
Okay.
Courtney got it from her. Anyway, carry on, yeah.
Anyway, I just love that band. I just thought they were so powerful live, and the screaming and the guitars and, their look. It was just something new and powerful and cool, and I really liked that band as a live band.
Laurie was a monster drummer.
Oh, a monster. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, girls can't play drums. Yeah, well, Laurie's, it doesn't take some random guy like me to say, Laurie's sweetheart, but she is. And I remember meeting her the first time I met her properly was at First Avenue. We were passing through, the entry, main room or whatever. And she, points at me and goes, Devin. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're a Devin. I said, yeah, and your name is Lori. I know that. And she knew me somehow, probably from older brothers, sisters, which I had several. I come from a family of 8. And I don't remember meeting her before. But she's treating me just like a friend.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, hi. Of course, they're yelling over the music, whatever is being played, the main room or the entry. Only lasted a couple of seconds.
But she recognized you just from your siblings, probably.
Well, yeah, but I can't remember having met her before that time.
It's amazing.
Through Katie, was she over at my house sometime? Well, I think I would have remembered her because she had, very distinctive, face. And,
right.
By the time, Babes in Toyland, her hair, the dreadlock like that, and it's just so much. This is just like one of the coolest, friendliest, most beautiful people I've met, and especially they're a musician.
Yeah.
Musicians are not, oftentimes are really, really irritating, effed up people, you know.
Right.
I only saw her a few times personally, you know, through the years after that. I remember when I first started Facebook, you know, what it was, 15 years ago or whatever, you know, I friended her or whatever. Lori had something like, I don't know, 20,000 friends or something, you know, you can see on her profile. And then, you know, like years later, because I hardly ever posted on Facebook, and, you know, now I'm done with it. So, like, apparently she did a purge. She had, like, tens of thousands of people just like me who, like, you know, vaguely knew her. And she, like, purged all these people, and I think I was one of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she was, you know, living in Texas, I think.
Yeah.
That's where she lives these days. Probably Austin. They were quite a force. I remember Dutch Hub first gig at the Entry. I'm sorry, it was at the Uptown.
Yeah.
And it was fire code capacity. It was completely, absolutely packed. And that was due to Katie. And we got off stage after, you know, packing up my drums quick and moving them, you know, off backstage. You know, the loading dock's right behind the stage. Kat comes up to me, this little tiny thing, and she's like, looks me right in the eyes and goes, I really like your band.
Yeah, well, that's cool.
And I was in just a jerky mood or something. I think I was like, you know, wasn't drinking then or something, you know, didn't drink any beers or whatever. I wanted to be really on the ball. I seem to remember maybe having like, you know, a mohawk, you know, like old paratrooper World War II style mohawk, and kind of been doing too many push-ups or something. And I seem to remember saying, oh yeah? What'd you like about it?
Yeah.
And kind of like being confrontational cat. And why? I just don't know. And it seems to me after a while, I started talking about their first album. Was it Fontanelle? I can't remember the name of their first album. But I ended up talking about Lori's drum sound, whether they used gating on her snare or whatnot, and Kat's eyes kind of like swimming.
Yeah.
I come up and pay him a compliment, and he's like being all weird. I don't know what my problem was. That was Dutch Oven's first gig, and that was the first critical response I got to our music was from Kat Belland. And I met her later. When I was working at the Walker, she was working as a freelance caterer. This is like after Katie died. I said hi and whatnot.
Yeah.
A funny thing about Kat had another band, you know, post Babes in Toyland.
Right, Kat is Trophy Wife, right?
Or, alternately, Catastrophe Wife.
Right.
Just sheer genius, that name alone.
Yeah.
Just Catastrophe Wife or Kat is Trophy Wife.
And they're good. I was listening to them the other day just to brush up on this, and they had a lot of power with, gritty guitars as well.
I don't remember. I don't think I ever saw them or maybe even heard them. Wasn't her husband in the band at the time with her?
Yeah, I think so. She was the lead singer, guitarist, and songwriter. Catastrophe Wife as a side project with her husband, Glenn Matson.
Oh, Glenn from the Glen Ross. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They played forever. They were a big. I saw them open for the Church. I'm pretty sure one that one of the many times I saw the Church in the main room, First Avenue. But yeah, Glenn. Yeah, he's a big noise. Yeah, producer. I think he had his own studio and played a couple of bands. But Glen Ross were his main. I didn't know that was he married Kat. Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't. I've heard of the Glen Russells, but I'm not familiar with their music.
Yeah, they were. Well, I don't know how to describe them. They were a good band. Well, I don't know how to describe them. They were a rock and roll band. Not hardcore or anything. Like Babes in Toyland. But so yeah.
It's interesting. It says Kat Bjelland grew up in Oregon, became friends with Courtney Love, and then they formed a band together called Pagan Babies. And when that broke up, Bjelland relocated to Minneapolis, where she formed Babes in Toyland with Lori Barbero.
Yeah, and then Courtney moved to Minneapolis as well before moving back to Olympia. Wasn't that where she's from?
She was born in Salem and raised in nearby Woodburn. She dropped out of the University of Oregon, relocated to Portland. That's where she met Courtney Love.
Part of the country I don't know much about, but that the whole grunge scene from the early '90s was based around that area. Seattle was, I guess,
Yeah.
But, Nirvana, all those people. But, I may have met Courtney, actually. Did not met her, like, formally, shook her hand or anything. I may have seen her.
I actually have a funny story about Mick Jones from The Clash and Courtney Love. One time I saw this show, you may have seen it. It was like a multi-band show, and I think Mick Jones was playing with Big Audio Dynamite at the time, and Courtney Love was also on the bill. I think probably with Hole. I don't remember if she was yelling at the audience, her performance was bad, and when Mick Jones came up, he just said in the microphone, "We love you, Courtney." He was like trying to be very supportive.
That sounds like our man Mick. Yeah. He's that kind of guy.
I thought next week we could kind of jump in a time machine, like just to pay homage to some earlier cool music coming out of Minnesota. And feel free to jump in here. But one thing I really wanted to mention was Surfin' Bird by the Trashmen from 1963.
I attended Washburn High School, which is a block and a half my house where I grew up.
Yep.
And a couple of my siblings attended Washburn.
I mean, that song is almost like punk rock. It just comes right at your face.
I think they had a word for that. It's called rock and roll. So the whole punk thing, I never liked that term when it was being used in real time. It's an American thing, penitentiary thing, not a flattering term. And wow, these bands, this sounds like has echoes of the rock and roll that I really like. And of course, I had excellent taste in rock and roll.
Yeah.
There's like doing it but a little bit faster and a little, cutting out some of the fiddly bits, as Ronnie Wood used to call fancy guitar playing.
Yeah, it's more chord based, and of course that song kind of got a second life. I think it was Full Metal Jacket. Stanley Kubrick used it to great effect.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's correct.
So, just a great song.
There's Mr. Dylan from Hibbing and Zimmerman. You and me, it's Mr. Zimmerman, or it's just Zimmy.
Yeah.
You can call me Zimmy. Corner Rain Glover, met when he, first moved to the Twin Cities in 1960, I guess. Was hanging out on the West Bank and at U of M. And do you remember the Union Bar?
I think so. Was that on a corner?
It was, when the bridge collapsed in, what was it, 2007? The bridge collapsed.
Yeah.
2007. It was like right by there.
Yeah, okay.
And the old building, and they had multiple apartments above that Union Bar, and I think then they became like a Christian rock bar for, sometime in the late 90s or something. But the Union Bar, they used to be like, sort of like the Caboose, a proper rock and roll blues, kind of bar. I remember seeing Sam and Dave there once.
Oh yeah, I saw them live one time.
Well, I saw them for the jam as well.
Nice.
Which, the audience were disgusting. The audience reaction, but that's another story. My sister Ann used to live upstairs of the Union Bar.
Yeah.
And she lived like next door, one of the apartments upstairs, to Dylan's first apartment when he first moved to the Twin Cities.
Oh, cool.
And I think it actually became a landmark. There may be, and I don't know what building now, or if it's a commercial establishment or a club, or I don't know anything about it now. I was only there a few times, hanging with my sister, and then maybe once or twice actually seeing a band downstairs. There may have been like a plaque or something, some kind of official recognition.
Yeah.
You could maybe look it up if you're a Dylanologist.
Is this in Dinkytown or no?
It's in Dinkytown, yeah.
Yeah, I think I know the place you're talking about.
Yeah, look up the Union Bar, and that'll give you the address, the exact location of it. And apparently, my sister Ann lived like right next door to the apartment. Her apartment was right next door to supposedly Bob's first Twin Cities apartment.
Okay.
The Trashmen, there's all kinds of, man. There's we haven't even touched on Prince.
Right.
Or The Time, or, Maserati, those people yet. So I don't know if we want to save that for another time.
Yeah, probably. I mean, that's probably you probably want to go into a little depth with that. Just touching on a few older things, Eddie Cochran from Albert Lee, Minnesota, one of the original rockabilly guys.
That's right. I say he was as good as Gene Vincent, or dare I say Buddy Holly.
Yeah, I agree. He's right up there with those guys. Great stuff.
Yeah, great guitar player. Just singing those songs. Summertime Blues, Come On Everybody, Something Else, 20 Flat Rock, Nervous Breakdown. Yeah, just keep coming. Yeah. He's one of the best of that era. I prefer him to Elvis Presley.
Yeah. The next one I'm going to pay homage to is Funky Town by Lips Incorporated, 1980. Twin Cities Sound 80 recording.
Yep, that came out of nowhere. That was kind of a...
Right?
I think that got some national play.
Oh, it was a big hit. It was a big worldwide hit.
Yeah.
It reached number one, actually, in several countries.
Oh, outside the States, yeah.
Yeah, it was number one in the U.S., Australia, Canada, France, Spain, Israel, New Zealand, West Germany.
It hit number one in the U.S., you said?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Funky Town?
Yeah.
No kidding. Wow. I didn't realize that. Of course, KQRS, Minnesota's classic rock. God, I hate that station. Even in 1980, they had some specialty shows late at night dedicated to local music. But 1980, even then, they wouldn't play Prince.
Apparently,
even 1984. Huh?
Yeah, crazy. Just like...
even, with the breakout of Purple Rain,
Yeah.
Still wouldn't play them. And probably to this day, the last several hundred times I've, had the misfortune to listen to KQRS on the job site, obviously, because you have to listen. It says in the manual, when you're at work, you have to listen to KQRS. And of course, it's got, the reception, monopoly on reception. But they still won't play Prince, our hometown.
A couple, as you're just reading here a little bit about Lips Incorporated, it was the brainchild of this guy, Stephen Greenberg from St. Paul. And he had put together this band, Lips Incorporated, which among the session players in that stall was David Rifkin, or David Z, who played with Prince. And the singer, Cynthia Johnson, was a former Miss Black Minnesota who had been performing with an early version of The Time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she had, her own soul career, later, doing, soul gospel stuff. She may still be working today, if she's still alive. Oh, speaking of people who are not alive, Kat Glover just died a couple days ago. And she was, she's from Chicago.
Yeah.
And apparently lived in Chicago. But, she was, Prince's dancer and choreographer.
David Sylvian is the lead singer for Japan.
I've heard of him too, yeah.
Lots of great solo records from him. He was married to, Ingrid Chavez. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, you're right. Well, Ingrid, that's not Kat.
Right, I know. I mixed them up.
Well, there are so many of them, All due respect to Mr. Rogers Nelson, there are a lot of them. And they're all, by and large, really great. Beautiful, talented, multi-talented, and Ingrid is one of them. But Kat was, I'm sure you've seen the movie, probably many times, Sign of the Times, from the Sign of the Times tour in 88. And, she's a choreographer, but she's also sang.
Kat or Ingrid? Which one, Kat or Ingrid?
Kat, Ingrid was on that, or I think that was pre-Ingrid. The Kat is just way too cool, way too beautiful. She's only 62.
Yeah. And
no cause of death, back living in Chicago. That's all I heard about it, so it's like 3-4 days ago. But for my money, Sign of the Times is one of the greatest live movies, not documentaries, but musical movies.
Yeah, I remember we talked about that last time. You thought it was his best movie, right?
Yeah. And, it's different from, documentaries or, say, Scorsese movies like The Last Waltz or Shine a Light or, the Rolling Thunder Review. But, a straight music film, which is live, but it's overdubbed as well and choreographed as well, and other stuff shot on soundstage. It's just one of the most joyful, just engaging musical experiences. It's, up there with any other musical, say, cinematic music. The Sound of Music, Singing in the Rain, as great as any of those. So it's a movie. It's not a documentary.
Yeah.
It's not a straight, live show representation. And Kat's she's just a big deal. You can't take her eyes off her.
Yeah.
You can't take your eyes off anybody in that band. So all these crazy people on a stage, black and white and Latino and male and female, just all these people. The sound and just the looks, and they all look different. Some are heavy, some are skinny and little, peculiar, like Prince himself. It's a wonderful, wonderful film.
Yeah.
So, Cat Glover, they are.
Well, here's an interesting tangent. Speaking of music like Cornery and Glover, if we're talking about Minnesota music, we should mention Leo Kottke, who was originally from Athens, Georgia, and moved to Minnesota to go to St. Cloud State and released his first record in 1966. He resides I know he used to live on Lake Minnetonka. It says on Wikipedia he resides in the Minneapolis area. I don't know where he lives exactly. Really talented, I think a largely acoustic guitarist, instrumentalist.
Yeah, I never got on board with him. I've heard some things, and I know my brother Sean had at least one of his albums when I was growing up, and I've heard him, and I think he's considered sort of a virtuoso, primarily of the acoustic guitar.
Yeah, very talented.
Sort of avant-garde as well, maybe a little like Richard Thompson or something.
But not super avant-garde. I mean, to me, it's more like, almost coming out of the folk tradition or something. It's not obscure. Yeah, that too. I heard echoes of like, Dan Hicks and his hot licks, sort of this early 20th century, parlor, music, where it kind of intersected with blues or what we call folk. But to your point, it says that he often tunes his guitars unconventionally. He does open tuning, so I think he does do, some unusual, type of tunings.
Yeah, I think he was considered not just like a folky folk, but
absolutely.
Actual like hardcore, a serious musician.
Yeah, almost like Pat Metheny, or not as jazz as Pat Metheny, but definitely open to exploring new musical spaces.
Yeah, and he's been around forever. I don't know if he still works. He must be pushing 80 by now, but I never got into him. I've heard bits and pieces, so I just never developed an opinion of him. I just thought he's a good homeboy.
Yeah.
He's even though I don't know his work, I'll claim him as.
Yeah, it's just good to mention him here. Give him some kudos.
Oh, for sure. And God, maybe I'll check out some YouTube videos.
Yeah, check out some clips.
Sign off.
I'll do the same. Thanks for joining us today on the Culture Drop podcast, where we discuss the Minnesota music scene. That was part 3. Join us next time when we continue with part 4.